Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today I want to talk about a poem that I read, a super cool poem as it is Poetry Thursday, a wonderful day to talk about the interesting poetry that has excited me and might excite you if you try it on your own. Today's poem is all about a Vietnamese immigrant's experience and their plea to rescue someone they love. I am referring to At the Vietnam Center and Archive by Hai Dang Phan. For those who don't know, Hai Dang Phan is a Vietnamese American writer. He's mostly known for his poetry, which he's gotten published in the past 10 years. So pretty relatively new poet. And he also serves as a translator, and he lives in Iowa City. There is that Iowa connection, as I grew up in Iowa, so there's, different ways of connecting with writers, I guess, there. But I don't know too much else about this writer, as that is sometimes the case on Poetry Thursday, as a lot of poets are either new or they haven't had a lot published besides their poetry, so there's not really too much else to say about them. So without further ado, let's talk about this poem. I will read it, do a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. At the Vietnam Center and Archive. Between 1985 to 1987, he writes sincerely, gratefully to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the International Red Cross Central Tracing Agency, Thai National Police, U.S. Department of State, and more. To no real end, though, each letter surpasses the last. First, he writes them in longhand and Vietnamese. Then I think someone helps revise, translate, and type. Don't say the boat was stopped or encircled. Say the boat was surrounded by the Thai pirates. It's true they took away with them 8 girls in our boat, but abducted captures the situation better. Say, the reading room will be closing in 15 minutes. I sit and stare at the rust print left by a paperclip, coiling into the dead end of a labyrinth. I'm reading the letters of Mr. Nguyen Van Tha concerning the disappearance of his granddaughter, Dinh Thuy Trang, when she escaped by boat. In the blue of his sentences, a boat leaves Vietnam on October 24th, 1985, ventures into the South China Sea, and drifts dangerously along the coast of Thailand. I can just make out the boat, a small open V, drawing its wake pattern on the sea in the letters. Around 9 a.m. of 26 October, the boat was surrounded by 5 fishing boats belonging to the Thai fishermen. I recoil at the actions his apt verbs dramatize. Invaded, search, ransacked, pried, looked, seized. I see teeth flashing inside mouths like knives. No trace of Thuy. She's gone. And so that was at the Vietnam Center and Archive. In terms of analysis, there's a little bit to talk about with this poem. In terms of narrative, it's really just the narrator at the library or the archive going through letters that have come through the archive in the past and finding out about a man who lost his daughter to Thai pirates and wondering where she might be. Which is overall a pretty sad endeavor in it, but it does highlight some common, like a common thread among Vietnamese immigrant stories, where they were able to immigrate to America, but possibly not with the entire family as they got separated, and they might call upon various agencies to help reunite or see if anyone matching the description or even the name of this specific person has come through the agency before, which is already, it gets you in the mindset of, a struggle of trying to persist and be reunited with those you love. But added to this is the sadness of pirates, of children, of women being kidnapped and taken who knows where. At the end of the poem, they say that there's no trace of Twee, she's gone, and it sort of displays kind of hopelessness feel to this poem. But one thing that's very interesting about this poem, and one thing that's a common thread among Phan's poems in general, is his use of language, particularly focusing on details, like obsessively focused on details to the point where you're like you miss the point. But it also adds a little bit to his poems because he's so focused on the minutia involved. Here you see him talk about the language used in the poem. He says someone must have told him to revise his statements. Like, don't say that the boat was stopped or encircled. Say that the boat was surrounded by the Thai pirates. And don't say they took away with them 8 girls from our boat. Say they abducted those girls. And at the end of the poem, you see a sort of description of all those revisions, saying, I can just make out the small boat. Around 9 a.m. on October 26th, the boat was surrounded by 5 fishing boats belonging to the Thai fishermen. I recoil at the actions his adverbs dramatize: invaded, searched, ransacked, pried, look, seized. And that really adds to the drama of the poem. But I think it also highlights something else that I think Phan might be getting at. The fact that this does not in any way capture the emotion of what is going through this man, that simply by reading those words, you're not really in, or you're not really feeling what this man is feeling. You're not capturing his perspective, because just because you know those large words, or just because you're able to say it like that, this man still felt a great sadness and desperation and anger and frustration about not being able to find his daughter. And simply by changing around the words, sure, that grabs someone's attention, but you haven't really grasped the emotion of the situation. And even adding to more of that is we're reading this from the perspective of the narrator who is reading the letters. We don't directly hear from the man himself, Mr. Nguyen Van De. We only hear from someone who's reading these letters. So we're really not getting his complete perspective. And I think maybe this is Phan trying to argue that, you can read about someone's plight, and you can think that you're empathetic, or that you understand it in some sort of way, but until you experience it yourself, you're still an outsider in the situation, which I think says a lot about how we view refugees, or how we read about stories of refugees. We're like, we're sympathetic to their cause. But if you were truly sympathetic, if you were truly in their shoes, your situation would be entirely different. And I think that's an interesting way of focusing on refugee stories in this poem. Anyway, those were my thoughts on At the Vietnam Center and Archive by Hai Dong Phan, a pretty good poem, one that I'm going to recommend that you read out there. I will put a link to it in the description, as per usual. If you read this before, you simply want to comment on something I said here, do so in the comments. Let's have a discussion about this poem. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this poem, or the poet, or even Poetry Thursday if they don't know about it already. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and archive traveling travels. Farewell.